So I'm assuming most of you have heard the news by now that Julian Assange, after years of being holed up in an Ecuadorian embassy, has now been arrested and is facing potential extradition to the US, maybe even Sweden if those sex charges come back up. But if he goes to Sweden, likely to go back to the US eventually after that, you know. That was his fear. That's why he jumped into the embassy in the first place, at least according to him. I think that's probably a valid concern, but you never know. I'm not an expert on Swedish politics. But nonetheless, the media has taken to talk about this like crazy. And the people on the hardcore free speech left, basically me, I'm biased, I'll throw that out there right now. But all the other people, not just me, the bigger voices out there, are very concerned about the issues of free speech and consider Assange himself to be a journalist, someone like the New York Times who publishes or gives out, distributes the information to the public, the leaked information to the public. Now, the charges that are thrown on Assange are obviously the ones that say that he had some hand in hacking, which sounds like ludicrous crap to me. Just to get it, just something to get him on, not something that actually has any valid backing and evidence. But I haven't looked into it, so you know, perhaps defer to either other people on that or do your own research to see if there's any validity to it. But I'm very skeptical of that right off the bat. Now, everyone on the more establishment-y side of things is not skeptical of that, does not hesitate to avoid calling him a journalist and blah blah blah. But to get to the main point of this video, this comes back to Trevor Noah's comments on Assange. And a lot of people, after seeing Noah's segment on this, have further become disheartened by The Daily Show. I'm talking about the people on the people on my left side of the aisle, on my corner of the internet, or in my echo chamber, my little bubble. People think, well, shit, Assange. Trevor Noah is no Jon Stewart, because look how he fucking covered this. And I decided, yeah, I'm gonna look at this video. I need to see how Trevor Noah covered this, because I have been disappointed in the way that he covers things. I do think he's not as good as Jon Stewart. Fuck, this is lame. So I looked at it and I watched Noah's coverage, and I thought, yeah, this is crap. Stewart would have done this better. But the question is, would he have done this better? Because we can actually, this is one of the few examples where we can go back in time and see Jon Stewart's position on this issue, how he covered it back when Assange was relevant, when he was on The Daily Show. Not a lot of political topics span, 5 to 8 years, 5 to 9 years. It's a long time, since 2010, yeah, I think that's 9 years. Or close to 9 years, because technically it'd be like, about July 27th when, or at least the first clip I found of Stewart talking about this, a clip titled, "Best Leak Ever." Which admittedly sounds very, very, very positive. at the beginning there, it might make you think, gee, Jon Stewart loves Assange. Here he goes. Here he's going to talk about this. And really put a succinct tie into society, that Stewart Zen moment of, like, really having an eye on the times that we all seem to know and love. Now, the reason why I'm so skeptical, why I decided to go back and look at these clips, is because I'm a young dude, a millennial, if you will. I was watching Stewart at the time in 2010, but in 2010 I was like in high school at best. No, yes, I was in high school. So, brain development, memory, distance and time, a lot of things change. My own political knowledge at the time, like, this was shortly after the election of Barack Obama, and at least when the election came around, I was pretty convinced that Obama was gonna close Guantanamo Bay and leave all the wars and all this other shit. And I thought, oh, he's gonna be a real, and I didn't know what a progressive was back at the time, but I was like, he's gonna be a real progressive. And then all of a sudden it's like, gets into office, well, Guantanamo what? Guan who? You mean my cleaning lady, Guadalupe? I don't know. You know, some sort of racist deflect. I'm sure he didn't have any racist deflects, but, you know, equivalent for sure. Anyways, you know, it was a huge disappointment. Obama did not come through on most of his campaign promises, and instead of giving hope and change, what he actually campaigned on, he gave more of like, you know, as is, like, oh, you know, let's just, I'll give you, not the healthcare I was even promised to give you, I'll just give you some, like, better private options, how about that? The public option, killed mostly by asshole senators from my home state, Joe fucking Lieberman, but nonetheless, Obama couldn't turn around that fucking mad, crazy, hawk, evil scum of the earth. And I don't know Lieberman's character. Maybe he's a good guy, but I really don't want to know, because even if he's a good guy that did that's good, fucking really bad for our country. It's been horrible. It's been at the very least, his impact has been a leech on our society. So, you know, good guy or not, that his actions speak a lot more than who he is. So now to the critique here. Jon Stewart, did he really give Assange a fair take? Did he, I don't know, defend him in any way? Did he meet our expectations in any way? The expectations of the free speech progressive left? And, you know, the answer is hard to, you know, if you look, you can look back at these clips yourself and you tell me, but I'm gonna throw out my, like, he starts off this first clip, talking about the scope of the leak, 92,000 pages of documents, makes a little joke saying, let the leakers know it's not a competition, pokes fun of the military's classifications of secret documents, so it's secret, not top secret, and then he goes pop secret and talks about popcorn, you know, silly comedy kind of stuff that he does all the time. Don't think he's like the hard-hitting, he never was the hard-hitting, like, oh yeah, every joke has its purpose or meaning. Like, some of this shit's just like over-the-top, goofy, blah. Just like what Noah does more often. At least still based on my perspective, even after looking through all this. But then he goes on to make fun of Chelsea Manning, and, you know, even people arrested, I'd say, you know, everything's fair in comedy, poke fun where you will. To some degree, what he was poking fun at, I think, has some validity and humor, you know. It's like the name, it's like the username or the profile name, Badass, or Bradass 87, her name was her name at the time, technically, at the time, you might say his. At the time, you would say his, not knowing her. His name, her name at the time, Bradley Manning. Now, obviously, Chelsea. So the Bradass 87 basically just gave away, you know, her birthday, gave away that she was an intelligence analyst for the government, gave away her first name, gave away, you know, her birthday at 1987. Pretty easy guesses when you really get at it. Not really well hidden. So Jon's joke was basically, how did they find him? How did they do it? You know, it's kind of funny. And then he goes on to the whole, there was this part of lip-syncing Lady Gaga, and I'm assuming that the gendered nature of Chelsea Manning, the gendered nature? What kind of words is that? What kind of words is that, man? Oh, this is very colloquial. The gendered nature? The gender identity of Chelsea Manning. Let's go with like some real words here. Was not well known at the time, or maybe it was still very much in the unknown. But, you know, so let's speak of the rest of this as just being a little bit more intuitive. He makes a joke on the lip syncing of Lady Gaga as like a way to hide this information or some shit like that on a Lady Gaga CD, some shit like that. Basically, he was saying, how does that not set up like how does that not throw up some like don't ask, don't tell red flags? Because it seemed pretty clear to him at the time, to probably a bunch of people. It's not a guarantee that if you listen to Lady Gaga, you've got some sort of feminine tendencies, or not straight up, you know, typical heteronormative masculine blah. You know, but it's an indicator, clearly. It's an intuitive indicator. It threw off Stewart's beacons for sure. You know, now, for the amongst the community, maybe there is some offensiveness to this, and, you know, I would consider listening to anyone's trouble, you know, if someone's feeling hurt by something, it should be important to hear them out on that. But I think context and intent is a huge part, and I don't think there was any ill intent, nor do I think, you know, nor do I think there was any guaranteed, like did Stewart have any real knowledge that, oh yeah, this person, you know, did he have any real knowledge? Did he have any real, you know, like he was clearly thinking gay, maybe, for all we know. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to get hung up on this one, this part. It's a very interesting debate, but nonetheless, I don't think there's any real meat there. And that's just my perspective on that. He goes on to actually really sink into, you know, really defend the credibility, the validity of this, kind of like the best leak ever title that you see. You know, people, he throws up clips of people in the media going, oh, this isn't really any new information. This is nothing new here, nothing big deal. Just a bunch of Fox News hosts and nonsense people like that. And Jon says in his quote, I'm not reacting to the newness of it, I'm reacting to the fucked upness of it. What does it take to get you guys fired up? This is a very valid question, you know, very powerful exclamation. I didn't give it out there, but it was, you know, very Stewart-esque. And I liked it. I think that was probably one of the highlight moments where he was really in the moment saying, no, this shit that's being revealed by these leaks is some fucked up shit. Let's not undermine it. Which, unfortunately, to some degree, he does later. Because we got more clips to run through. So, anyways, he by his succinct nature, is able to tie in this sort of like, yes, this reveals the existential trap we find ourselves in Afghanistan, this, you know, continually feeding weapons to our enemies that are going to come back and kill us so that we have to defend ourselves against them, and like sort of weird Catch-22-esque nonsense. And he's very, very good at summing that up in a way that's clearer and better than what I am giving you right now. And shorter and more to the point. And that's what we love about him, you know. But I think the worst ones come along the next episode that I'm going to talk about around November 30th. The clip titled, or sketch or clip titled "The Informant." And this is where we get some harder critiques on Stewart from people further to the left than him. David Walsh from the World Socialist website wrote an article on this one on December 7th. I don't know if these dates are relevant to you, they're relevant to me, so I'm gonna tell you. And he goes pretty fucking hardcore on Jon Stewart, basically saying that he went out of his way to attack WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange, that he downplays the explosiveness of the WikiLeaks material, makes fun of Assange's name, makes light of the diplomatic crisis involved in those leaks. Very, very passionate opinion on this. He goes on to say that it's an act of, if nothing else, of extraordinary cowardice, he says, on Jon Stewart's part. And I think that's probably the strongest thing I've heard against it. Continues on by saying that Stewart's general trajectory is increasingly towards the establishment, and saying that if you're looking for opposition, you better not look for it in The Daily Show. Hardcore nailing of Stewart in the segment. And if you want to read, I'm going to link that article in the description, because it's a pretty hardcore hit on Stewart, and I think some of the points are valid and credible. I think maybe some of it's a little too hard on Stewart, because, you know, he's a comedian. Most of this is satire. A lot of this is dependent on the narrative that the mainstream is going through. If you're going to make fun of the mainstream, you tend to have to buy into their narrative at least a little bit to, you know, further the I don't know, to make fun of them, to get beyond the bullshit they're at and pull the audience further left. Now, did Stewart pull them further left in this segment? I don't know. I mean, he's pretty firm at, you know, calling Assange a villain at that point. You know, super villain, comparing him to a Magneto, Osama bin Laden. So it's hard to really say that Stewart is at all defending, you know, is at all valid, you know, defending this guy for the leaks in this segment. But I think when you compare it to the previous segment where he's really talking about the leaks and saying how it's very important, this downplaying seems to be more of a, this downplaying now seems to be more of a just parodying the well, I don't know if it was fully that. Certainly the making fun of Assange's name was parodying a very specific, I think it was a Fox News host at the time, who went and did Assange's name's Assange, you know, very, very enunciated in accents of other languages. You know, it's very clear that that's where Stewart was going with that one. I find that not to be a really like oh, he made fun of his name. That's so not what you should be doing. It's like, oh, like poking fun at someone's name is fine. My name's Langevin. Langevin. Fuck. People's names are weird. Deal with it. People fucking called me Langevin all my fucking life. Because they couldn't get the name right. And everyone else with a weird name knows what I'm talking about, because they've experienced it too. We live, you know? We have weird names. They're not easy to pronounce unless you grew up with them and you knew it since fucking birth or whenever I started talking, you know? It shouldn't be an expectation that someone's like, oh yeah, Assange's name. You should just like completely respect that. And if you don't, that means you're like going after his free speech of society or something. And that's not what Walsh said, but nonetheless, it seemed to me like that wasn't really the meat of, you know, the article. It didn't seem to me like that one really hit anywhere. It just seemed like filler to me. I'm sure Walsh is a great reporter. I'm not a reporter at all, so take these critiques how you will. I'm not trying to be a hardcore reviewing asshole, and I don't even know if you'll see this. The making light of diplomatic crisis. Well, I mean, at the time, I'm sure it seemed like a huge, big deal of diplomatic crisis, but since then, the shit that our country said, the shit that Trump's done, diplomacy is, and probably has been for a long time, in a really tense, awkward place. Now, all this shit that's veiled and underneath the surface and not being directly said, people know anyway. Let's be honest, you know, like when the Pope, you know, like when Catholic priests and shit, like, molest little children, molest little boys. That's common public knowledge. It might not become a scandal until, you know, 2010 or some point in time like that. WikiLeaks, I believe, had a part in that. But it's still a known factor. It's still, you know, like, it's still not good for the boys, for their families. There's still a, you know, growing distrust in the Catholic leadership, and that world could totally just be a pedophile ring for all we know. I'm not trying to peddle any conspiracy theories here, but the fact that these people are still being shuffled around means that there's still some hardcore complicity in the, you know, this Me Too for the Catholic Church is not, that bubble ain't burst yet, you know? So this whole worry of like, oh no, diplomacy is in danger. I think Stewart was actually right on that point to say no fucking big deal. I think that that's fair to say that's you know, not to diminish the specific materials of WikiLeaks in general and to compare them to the Pentagon Papers and say, well, the Pentagon Papers actually revealed something legitimate, but WikiLeaks, fuck that, they didn't reveal much. I don't know what to say about that. I say that's the biggest criticism. That's the meat. That's the meat right there, because arguably WikiLeaks revealed some fucking shit, and I wasn't around for the Pentagon Papers, but I would not diminish what WikiLeaks said. In fact, I think comparing them to some degree is the wrong thing, because they're both very important pieces of the puzzle that we would need, you know, that's useful, you know, for transparency, for freedom of information, for the betterment of our society. It is completely important to know all the citizens and journalists shit that was being fired at and all this crap that was going down, all the innocent deaths. You know, this is important. I don't know why Jon decided to go that route. And, you know, there you have to wonder, you have to consider if Walsh had a point about him being pushed towards the establishment, or at least the trajectory of The Daily Show being pushed further and further towards the establishment, and maybe that's really why Jon Stewart ended up leaving. Now, I'm going to try and make this quicker, because I'm guaranteeing you that this is pretty long, so, at this point. So there was one more clip that Jon Stewart did. This was on December 8th, like, right after Walsh's article, which almost makes you wonder if it was a response to it or not. Probably not, no. Usually they plan these things, like, days in advance, right? So there's a strong likelihood that, you know, the writers weren't like, oh, reading, like, an article at a socialist website, you know, right before they made the episode. Oh, look, David Walsh is commenting on this. We gotta, you know, come out with something a little less harsh, a little more ambiguous. And that's just what this episode was, to some degree, apart from, you know, the hard swipes at Julian being a potential predator, possibly rapist, too. A lot of people strongly agree that these allegations are bullshit, and the charges have been dropped multiple times, and all this other shit. So there's this huge defense for Assange out there when it comes to the sexual assault allegations, the potential rape allegations. I have not looked into it very deeply, and even if I did, a lot of this so very word of mouth, so very he said, she said, and I was not there firsthand. I'm never going to have been there firsthand, so for me to speak confidently on one side or the other side of an issue like that is just very dishonest. You know, it's almost like an act of faith. You have to be very religiously leaning. This is like believing in God to be able to believe in the man or the woman on the side of an issue where there's no other strong, pertinent evidence. And a lot of times there is strong, pertinent evidence. Like, they told a friend right after it happened, and 10 years later they felt like coming out. Usually that's at the very least symbolic of, you know, the feelings, how this comes out emotionally, you know, how bravery may well up in someone to come forward after years of not being confident, and, you know, now this person's trying to become some big shot Clarence Thomas type or something like that. And by the way, Joe Biden helped Clarence there, so, you know, fucked with Anita Hill. It was really all his responsibility there, so... And now they're talking touchy Joe Biden, which I think is more based on his personality. I don't really think he's a creep, but nonetheless, still a huge issue of not understanding people's boundaries, not respecting them, possibly while trying to be kind in a way that most people don't relate to these days, you know, in a different social atmosphere that might be acceptable, you know, where people's boundaries are a little, you know, where people are more trusting of each other. The point is, we live in a society where we're very not trusting of each other, and for good cause, because a lot of fucking shit goes down, a lot of rapey shit, a lot of bad masculine toxicity, they would say, a lot of toxicity on the other side, you know, some huge gender tension between both sides, you know, an enormous shift in the way we normally run our society, how our norms work, socially speaking. And through that, I mean, that's where a lot of the tension is coming from, is this lack of knowing, this lack of understanding, this shift is happening, and a lot of people aren't ready for it on both sides of the aisle. Or, you know, and some people aren't ready to move forward, or want to choose to blame or make excuses, or there's so much going on with that topic. And here I am going off on another little fucking tangent rant. Okay, so as I was saying about this segment with Jon Stewart, he goes more ambiguous. The Predator thing is the worst thing, but he compares... He's really talking about Assange, and Assange being arrested before, you know, eventually he got out on bail and then ran off to an Ecuadorian embassy. So Stewart didn't know that part at the time. But so he starts off by pointing out, you know, Assange is like a mix of Steve Jobs, like that sort of personality type 3, achiever type, you know, very charismatic type, good on stage, good at pushing a product, good at getting shit done type of person. Look up the Enneagram if you want to know what I mean by 3 there. But then he goes, Lex Luthor. Very negative perspective. It's like, okay, this guy's a villain, an evil villain, a super villain. Is Lex Luthor super? So a villain. But then he actually goes on and he's like, okay, but no, also like, much like Larry Flynt, you know, what does he say? The free speech passions of a Larry Flynt. Which, you know, look him up, he's got a lot of, you know, defending of free speech, going to court over free speech issues, Hustler magazine, sex stuff, obscenity laws, and all that nonsense. So, you look into that more if you're interested. I found it fascinating. I don't know who the fuck Larry Flynt is before this. Too young for that shit. But then he goes on, plays a bunch of clips of various people. He plays the clips of the ridiculous right-wing side, Bill Kristol calling him a villain. But then he actually goes and he shows the opposition side, the free speech side, the people who call him like a warrior practically for free speech, you know, free speech hero or something. She even shows a clip of Glenn Greenwald defending him. And you know, really tries to paint this picture of, you know, there's multiple sides to this, there's multiple angles to this, there's an ambiguity to this. Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he free speech? Is he a danger to the established way, like an espionage evil motherfucker or something like that? Or is he a predator? So I think that shows a little more... I mean, it's very centered on the ground, but at the same time, it at least gives a lot of voice to the side that is defending Assange, where I think when you look at the Trevor Noah clip, he does speak that side, but he's very, 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 very dismissive of it. You know, Noah does the same jokes as you know, as Stewart, you know, compare Draco Malfoy's biological father, a lot like the, you know, the comment, you know, evil comments, as well as the evil people comments like Luther and stuff, but also like a comparison to people who are sort of lookalikes to Assange, because Malfoy looks a lot like him, and another person that Stewart mentioned looked a lot like him. I'm not familiar with who she was, but very similar looks, you know, very waspy, sort of white hair, blonde, albino, whatever the fuck type people. Noah, you know, goes on, makes fun of his arrest, calls WikiLeaks a rogue organization, you know, slips that one in there, like Stewart would never do that, something I'm at the very least say, you know, so there's a point off for Noah, at least one. How did he not get arrested all this time? Noah's answer to how did he not get arrested all this time was just to take stupid clips from the what the news organization said and just basically like run with that. Not throw out his own point, you know, but basically say, you know, oh well, they said he was skateboarding and stealing Wi-Fi and his cat was pooping everywhere. So yeah, well, what is Julian Assange doing? You know, skateboarding across an embassy. Jesus, it's like, if Noah really cared about being that watchdog, being that you know, truth to power type, he would probably be more or less saying, you know, he could maybe making a joke about that at the very least, but I think he would at least then go on and say, no, it's pressure from the United States government on Ecuador that, you know, tipped this scale finally over. You know, 5 years of pressure plus some like money thrown at them maybe. I haven't seen the full details on that, but there's definitely something. Yeah, that's the obvious one. That makes a lot more sense than the skateboards and stealing Wi-Fi and all that nonsense. But then he does his final comparison, which I think is another just drastically, dreadfully offensive one, saying, on the one hand, pretty much everyone hates Assange. So like, so you know, here's his comparisons. You know, here's his weighing the scales. Is on the one hand, everyone hates Assange. So it's like, you know, fuck what Greenwald says, fuck what all these other people say, blah blah blah. You know, this comment in full is probably one of the most vacuous things I've ever heard in my life. And then he says, but on the other hand, many people aren't happy about him getting arrested. And that's not the full quote, but I want you to just pause on that part and just digest that for a moment. But so on the other hand, so here's the two sides. Everyone hates him. On the other hand, you know, many people aren't happy about him getting arrested. So it's about their emotions, you know? It's not about free speech. There's no valid points to this. There's no important thing. The key, the sort of the crux of this thing is in the fact that they're not happy. And why are they not happy then becomes because they worry this could open the door to journalists getting arrested for leaking government secrets. Now already he paints the perspective of the people on my side of the aisle, the people on the Assange free speech side of the aisle, the people who are really concerned about this as being, you know, already accepting of some establishment narratives. They, you know, notice how he says, because they're worried this could open the door to journalists getting arrested for leaks on government secrets. This subtle word dance around here implies that we don't think that Assange is a journalist. Because if you perspective-wise consider Assange a journalist here, then it's not opening the doors of the, like, for a potential of this happening. It is a journalist getting arrested for leaking government secrets. And that's fucking huge. That is, in the immediate moment, if he's indicted to the US and charged on this shit. From our perspective, you know, that is the US prosecuting journalists for leaking government information, which is a huge undermining of, you know, the integrity of journalism, of the government, this bad shit all around. Because if that's the case, how will we ever get another Pentagon Papers? If every single, even the people who are just distributing the information get arrested for distributing the important public information that we need to know. They're not the whistleblowers, these are the journalists. You know, the journalists giving voice to the whistleblowers getting arrested, and that's some serious shit. Now, there is the question of, did Julian try and hack some shit? Well, arguably, you know, clearly it's all on Manning to begin with anyway. Manning's in jail right now because Manning says that's bullshit. So, you know, it seems to, you know, that whole line was thrown around in 2010 as well. So it's like, I don't think that has any credibility. But if it did, if that's a fact, if that's a guarantee, and Assange actually participated and actually did something with hacking, you know, not attempted hacking, because that's just, I don't know, that's just a cop-out, clearly. Then maybe there's some legal precedent there. But I really, you know, this really reeks to high heaven of attempting to prosecute on the basis of this person is a journalist, this person is revealing the information, it's a real threat to our democracy, to, you know, to the public power, to the public good, and Trevor clearly did not sum that side up, did not weigh that side up in a way that considered that perspective of point of view, whereas Stewart did. Now, when you look at it, was Stewart the perfect angel defender of Julian Assange? Absolutely fucking not. If Walsh has anything to say with it, Stewart was an establishment puppet, dancing the line, you know, much to the, you know, the disagreement to the memories of many of us, you know, who watched The Daily Show for so many years. But on the other hand, when you really compare these things, you've got, you know, the notable similarities, the notable differences, the notable similarities. Both Stewart and Noah, you know, demonized, villainized, dehumanized Assange in various ways. Both Noah and Stewart gave some voice to the other side of it, albeit Stewart's more clearly and more concisely to the point. Both played silly jokes, throwing off comparisons to Malfoy and Luther and Magneto and all sorts of other characters, villains and stuff. Both did silly nonsense jokes too. You know, you got the cat at the end of Noah's segment. You know, just you know, humor for the sake of humor, but not for the sake of actually saying anything valuable to the situation. I think that is a true part of the Daily Show. Regardless of, you know, any of the other great stuff that Stewart has done over the years, that even Walsh defends in his article to some degree. But at the end of the day, I think the one thing that still clearly is there is that Stewart still has the pulse of what's going on a lot more. Still, you know, he gave credit, he gave notice to the Pentagon Papers. He spoke and told why those leaks mattered. You know, that was the Vietnam War, and all of it was based on a fucking foundation of lies. And that's what government leaks are all about, is how fucked up this shit is when this shit happens. I would have loved it if Stewart had been more concise about how these leaks were impactful. I think the diminishing of it really takes Stewart's Daily Show years down a notch in my book, because, quite frankly, you know, there's absolutely no reasons to have done that. That almost takes away from him being on the pulse on so many things. That's a moment where he faltered, where he slipped away, where he, you know, went with the establishment, or maybe was pressured by, you know, Viacom, for all we know. And that could be why he even left. Maybe why Noah is so bad right now is because the Daily Show became such a big thing that they couldn't let it go anymore. I don't know. Very much all speculation, but makes me wonder to some degree if that has something to do with it. So I guess in conclusion, Stewart is not the ideal, is not perfection, is not the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the truest and hardest and most vicious, sinking his teeth in watchdogs of all time. But even his clips from 2010 show that he is still better at speaking truth to power, speaking the meaning, the importance of a leak, than Trevor Noah is. But nonetheless, for all of you who just blindly are like, Stewart was better, just know this time, amongst probably many other times that you can compare, are probably enormously different from this, or maybe similar, I don't know. I haven't done a thorough research on it. That this time, he wasn't that great. He wasn't that worth defending on it. He really kind of, you know, undermined the impact of these leaks, and maybe in reaction, you know, didn't give the valuable information that some people needed to hear at that time on what was really bad that our government was doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. Because I don't think it's enough to just compare it to the Pentagon Papers and say, they did worse, so why do I have to cover this? I don't really know if it was, why do I have to cover this, but it certainly seemed like it was effectively, I'm not giving as much information on this. I'm not giving as much details about the most impactful parts on this because I lived through Vietnam and poo-poo, you know? So, yeah. Stewart really let me down there, and maybe Noah gets more of a pass. He certainly doesn't get a pass, but he gets closer to a pass than I originally thought coming into this.